I don't really have any set plans for games to play on this channel. Most of the time it's just whatever I want to play at the moment. However, even from the start, I've always had in mind to cover certain series I really love chronologically, one game at a time for every 10th game I cover. This time, that's Ratchet and Clank. The plan is to cover all of them, from the ones that I adore, to the ones I mostly enjoy, to the ones I'm indifferent towards, to... But why only once every 10th video? Well, I've already mentioned in my Rayman videos that I get severe fatigue from playing the same series over and over, especially from games that mostly rely on their gameplay over the story. While the games do bring different flavor from entry to entry, the core in Ratchet and Clank stays mostly the same. They're different from, say, the Uncharted series, which focus mainly on the overarching plot. I still love the games, but playing through them one by one over a short amount of time will ruin whatever it is I feel about them, making the good bad or the bad worse. That's why, for now, we're doing it like this. So, to start us off, here's Ratchet and Clank 2002. I fucking hate that I have to say that. The original Ratchet and Clank is probably one of my favorite games, maybe ever, and almost certainly the one I've played through from start to finish the most. And while it's not my definite favorite, it easily ranks in the top 5. If you were to look at any game objectively, which is damn near impossible and really shouldn't be attempted at all, but just stick with me here, you'd probably split your opinions into 3 main groups: gameplay, story, and presentation. Ratchet and Clank doesn't necessarily get top scores in each. Actually, it's probably near a 7, 6, and 6 respectively, which would land it somewhere in the good but not great territory. But you can't grade a game like that. See, to me, Ratchet and Clank is greater than the sum of its parts. What I mean by that is that when you take the gameplay, the story, and the presentation and blend it all together, you get something unique, something that might mean a lot to me, but maybe not to others, all depending on our different circumstances. So, where am I going with this? Well, the tale of how I got into this series, starting with this first game, is sort of special to me, I suppose. This might also be why I like Ratchet and Clank 1 better than what seems to be the fan favorite Going Commando, which was just Ratchet and Clank 2 here in Europe.
The gospel train is a-comin', I hear it just at hand, I hear the
Let me take you back to a simpler time, where the only thing I worried about was which game I'd play whenever I got home from school. I just started first grade, and being the awkward kid I've always been, I had a little trouble making friends. Honestly, I've pretty much ejected the entirety of 1st to 7th grade out of my head for various reasons, but one of the things I'll probably remember forever is this one kid who lived right next to the school, actually. I don't really remember how this all went down, but somehow we connected, probably over video games or something, and he was the first real friend I made through school. Anyways, since he lived so close, we'd sometimes sneak off to his house during recess, where he'd play games on his PS2 while I watched. One day he invited me home after school, since he'd just gotten a new game that he had to show me. Keep in mind, this was still pretty early in our friendship, so I was kinda skeptical. One of the other guys in class actually invited me home to him so I would help him with his household chores, while acting like it'd be a big honor or something. Needless to say, I never hung out with him again. But anyways, the game this kid wanted to show me was Ratchet and Clank, and we kinda bonded over it, which led to our friendship getting stronger and stronger, until at 4th grade when he moved away and started going to a new school. It's always been kind of a mystery to me why he went to a different school when he really just moved like 10 minutes away by car. Anyways, we hung out a couple of times, but the lack of daily interactions and him making new friends, plus me being at the height of my social awkwardness, made things weird between us. So we eventually just stopped visiting each other altogether. I eventually got the game for myself a little later on, And even though it's been so long, these memories still flow back every time I start it up. Ratchet and Clank, developed by Insomniac Games, which they will remind you of every single time you start up the game, by the way, was the next big project of the developer whose track record included games like Spyro the Dragon and Disruptor? Man, I actually didn't know about this until now. I've got to check this one out, if only to experience these epic FMV cutscenes for myself.
He seems to know his way around the block. How about you?
So, maybe they've only made like 4 games so far, but they've all been bangers, right? This was also their first try at making a game for the new generation of consoles. And they promised a game that would be as loud and spectacular as possible, and honestly, I'd say they succeeded. Well, unless you've only seen the title screen. For a game all about shooting your way through hordes of enemies, it sure has a serene title screen. I miss it when games used to do this. Nowadays, it's for the most part just a big logo plastered on an uninspired background, but here you can see Ratchet tinkering in his garage at night. It's not much by any means, however, it's a sign that this is more of a work of passion than an everyday job. At least in my eyes. Or maybe it was just a product of the times. Who knows? You can just sit and stare at this for a minute while forgetting everything that may bother you and really contemplate the meaning of, oh, hey, there's another thing not really present these days. Remember when games played demo footage if you lingered on the title screen for a while? Good times. So I'm playing this on the PS3. These days the HD version, flawed a port as it might be, is probably the best option you have. It irks me a bit that they did away with the cool save menu from the PS2 version, but honestly it's not that big of a deal. When we start up a new game, we see what Ratchet was working on all along. A ship. And one that he apparently built himself too. One has to wonder though, why did it build it so that it requires a robotic ignition system when he doesn't have one?
Final step, attach robotic ignition system. Thank you for using help desk technology.
Intergalactic standards maybe? Meanwhile, on a different planet, a defective robot is born and barely escapes termination after witnessing a horrible truth.
He seems to know his way around the block. How about you?
He steals a fighter jet but gets shot down by his pursuers above the planet Veldin and crash lands right in Ratchet's backyard. This is where we get our first taste of gameplay. Our first objective is to check out the crash site, but only after we trash our own workshop. You'll discover soon enough just how important bolts, which is this universe's currency, are in this game, so collecting as much as possible should always be at the top of your to-do list. Thankfully, there are bolts in everything. Even these stupid toads have money in them, and they're as biological as they come. This is an action platformer, which means you'll do platforming and you'll do action. If the combination of these two completely unrelated concepts confuse you, fret not, because the Gadgeton help desk is here to, well, help. Or not. Jokes aside, this first part of the game is actually a really nice introduction. The controls feel good, although Ratchet can be a bit floaty at times, but that's nothing you won't get used to by the end. As for ways to defend yourself, you start out with a wrench, of all things, and the bomb glove, which is, in my opinion, one of the best weapons in the game. If nothing else, it's super fun to mess around with by combining it with side flips and such, which really increases the cool factor of the weapon. This tutorial level isn't a walk in the park either, so you'll actually have to make full use of both the wrench and the bomb glove to get through unharmed. And even if you do get hurt, these nanobots will instantly repair you from the inside out. Which is nice. Over in the crash site, Ratchet finds the robot and takes him with him to the garage. The robot wakes up and scares the shit out of him. Until now, there's been no dialogue whatsoever, so I was just as surprised the first time I saw this cutscene. The robot explains that he's looking for someone to assist him with saving the solar system. I just love how it looks over at the poster of Quark, and immediately comes to the conclusion that, yeah, That guy looks suitable. Imagine if this was a picture of some pinup model instead, like, wow, this would be a completely different game. He also shows Ratchet the Infobot, as they're called. These are my favorite part of the game. There's just something about these things, they never fail to entertain. Whenever you find one, you're likely to go, yes! I can't wait to see what they've got in store for me next. Not only do they all have amazing cutscenes in them, but they also contain coordinates to different planets. The video serves more as an introduction of sorts to what you can expect when you get there, well, most of the time at least, and they never fail to get at least a small chuckle out of me, even after having watched them closer to 20 times already. A lot of that has to do with the writing and comedic timing. Everything flows so smoothly and they hit all the right beats like 99% of the time. It of course helps that the voice acting is phenomenal too. So the contents of the flying flat screen basically reveals a plan by Chairman Drek to disassemble various planets to put together a new ideal one for his own race, the Blarg, since someone threw up all over their old one. Of course, this has its own set of side effects.
Unfortunately, this change in mass will cause your planet to spin out of control and drift into the sun, where it will explode into a flaming ball of gas. But, of course, sacrifices must be made. Thank you for your cooperation.
Cut!
And if you don't like it, you can take your whiny, sniveling, snot-nosed populations, form a line behind me, and kiss my... We're still on? Well, turn it off, you idiot!
As you can see, this guy is not fooling around. As our heroes leave Veldin, we see Drek spot Ratchet's ship leaving the atmosphere and sends a huge brute after them, and we'll talk about that later. On their way to Novalis, Ratchet displays his impeccable driving skills.
54296. Oops. I'll just call you Clank for short.
And names the robot Clank, since he clanks. It's no wonder he literally crashes when he tries to land the ship. Welcome to Tobra Crater, Novalis, the first real level of the game. Right off the bat, you have 3 ways you can go. Most of the planets you visit are the same. There's almost never just one single linear path to take, and it's all up to you to choose which to explore first. Well, granted you have the required equipment to traverse them. Some of these paths aren't even required. For example, if you head back behind the ship, there's a bolt that can be turned to open the door, which leads to a cave with a bunch of enemies and money. There's not really anything important in there either, and it simply loops back around to your ship. I really like it when games does this. Well, not when there are several paths without anything special at the end, but 2 or 3 in the course of a game feels just perfect. And it's not like it's completely empty either. If you've got sharp eyes, you might have spotted a tiny crack in one of the walls near the end. Blast these rocks away with a bomb, and there's a hidden gold bolt. At first, the gold bolts might just seem like almost pointless collectibles, but there is an actual use for them. When you beat the game, you're greeted with this screen that sums up your progress, I guess. There's one post here that says 0 out of 10 gold weapons. You might think to yourself, gold weapons, huh? I can't remember seeing one of those. And yeah, unless you explored absolutely everywhere, you probably wouldn't. There are 2 places where these can be obtained. The first one is a secret room in the Gemlik base. At this point in time there are only 5 of them, and chances are you won't be able to afford even one. These things, on top of costing 4 gold bolts each, are crazy expensive. If I can, I usually go for the gold bomb glove though. It's just mad OP. The other place is actually on planet Novalis, but only after you beat the game, and that one contains the 5 other as well. It's an interesting way to reward the player for exploration, though it seems like it's mainly meant for spicing up repeat playthroughs. Not only will you probably not know of it until you've already finished the game, but they're so expensive that you'll probably need to play through everything at least another 2 times before you're able to afford them all. They're nice upgrades though, and it's not just a damage upgrade either. Each gold weapon enhances the capability of the original one. But before I go over the gold versions, I should probably talk about the normal weapons. The firearms of Ratchet and Clank were probably the biggest draw of the game to a lot of people. The marketing department probably figured as much too, seeing as the bulk of the advertisements about the game chose to focus on that.
That is the morph array, and that, of course, is Jerry. The morph array is used in Ratchet and Clank to turn your enemies into chickens.
No, but wait, before you do that, just explain to me how it's gonna work.
Oh, it worked. Jerry's a chicken. Are you sure we can turn him back?
Jerry?
The Morph Array, one of 36 weapons and gadgets not fit for this world. Rated T for Teen.
Let's go over the weapons one by one, because a lot of them are truly pretty unique, which is sort of impressive seeing as there are 15 of them. Though I do struggle to call some of these weapons. First of all, not included in the weapons tab in the pause menu, thus excluded from the 15 real weapons, is the Omni Wrench. This is Ratchet's default melee weapon, and it's good in a pinch, I guess. Most of all, it'll probably be used to break boxes or take out easy enemies to conserve ammo. There's a 3-hit combo, a jump strike, and you can even throw it like a boomerang. However, this breaks up the pace a lot, since Ratchet has to stop dead in his tracks to wait for the wrench to return. It's a useful ability, it's just not that fun to use. The bomb glove you already know my opinions of. It's a glove that lets you throw bombs. What more do you need? It's definitely one of the more useful weapons. Not only is it really strong, but it allows you to be quick on your feet and it's easy to use midair. Just don't let enemies get too close. The aiming can be a bit tricky then. The Pyrocider is available the moment you land on Novalis. That's the way it usually goes. Almost every time you go to a new planet, there's also a new weapon available from the Gadgetron vendor. By the way, here's a good example of the less than good job they did with the porting. The Pyrocider is probably my favorite weapon, even though it's basically just a flamethrower. The gold upgrade makes it even cooler. Now the fire is green. There's just something so mesmerizing, just watching the world burn down before my very eyes.
I love the Pyrocider. I'm not sure what that says about me.
Where were we? The blaster is like the Pyrocider, only worse. Okay, fine, it's got a few niche uses since it has an actual reticule, but the sad reality is that the other weapons dwarfs its capabilities. It's a gun, I guess. Personally, I don't use it very much. The gold upgrade is cool though. It adds rebound to the shots, which lets it jump from enemy to enemy or even from walls. The Glove of Doom is the bomb glove, only worse. This thing fires out a bunch of little exploding robots, but their AI is kinda bad. The Mind Glove is the bomb glove, only worse. You seeing a pattern here? Well, to be fair, the Mind Glove also has its niche uses. You can use it to set traps for patrolling enemies or enemies that hide. Other than that though, their use is limited, especially since their homing range is so short. Both the gold upgrades for these two gloves just increases the damage as far as I know. The Taunter is an odd one. It doesn't use any ammo, thank god, but its only function is to make noise. The noise is so loud that it breaks boxes, but it doesn't actually damage enemies. The game is usually very good at making the right weapon available for the right world, and this one pretty much exists solely so that you can avoid having to deal with most of these mutated snapping turtles by luring them into these laser doors, which kills them. Other than that, there really aren't many uses for it. I guess you can repeat the same trick on a later planet, but at that point, you're probably well enough equipped to just take them out normally. Speaking of useless weapons, the Suck Cannon. Just as its name implies, it sucks. This was actually one of the first weapons the team made, and the only one to keep its original name throughout the entire design process. It's nice to have, especially if you're out of ammo on your other weapons, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like it complements my playstyle very well. I like to just run into big groups of enemies and take them out all at once, preferably with the Pyrocider. With the Suck Cannon, you can't really do that. First of all, you need to suck up small enemies for ammunition. The cannon only fits up to 5, I believe, and the rate of fire is horrendous. The gold version upgrades both of these aspects, but it still feels sluggish to me. This is also an entirely optional weapon found in one of the extra routes on planet Eudora. The Devastator is basically a bazooka, but with homing shots. This is probably one of the best weapons in the game from a pure damage perspective, but it's nothing super interesting. The gold version has bouncing shots and improved firepower, I believe. The Walloper is more like a wrench upgrade, really. It doesn't use any ammo, and it's super satisfying to land a hit with this thing. It's also really powerful. It can even break these metal-plated boxes. The Visibomb gun lets you fly a missile around, however it leaves you defenseless, so it's best used behind cover or in a place without enemies. You can fly this thing through the entire level if you want to, and it's super helpful for dispatching tougher enemies that shoot you on sight, especially in the later levels. The decoy glove is, well, it's nice, I guess. It also has some niche uses, but deals no damage until upgraded to gold, and doesn't really do well against a lot of enemies. The design of the gold version's dummies are kinda cool though, and it can help by giving you some breathing room if you feel overwhelmed, but by far the best thing to come from this weapon has to be the commercial it was in.
That is Corey. He's helping us with our inflatable decoy test for Ratchet and Clank. Oh man.
The drone device, while a novel idea, is also kinda sucky. For starters, it only has an ammo capacity of 10. It does guard against some projectiles, but not all of them. And in the world you can buy it in Hoven, it doesn't even dispatch the weakest enemies with one explosion. I usually just forget about this one. The drone device was originally meant to be a glove weapon, but was changed seemingly at the last minute because a lot of the text from the game mislabeled it. Ratchet and Clank just has this fetish for glove weapons for some reason. Out of the 15 weapons, over 1/3 are gloves, and out of the 10 gold weapons, 5 of them are gloves. Weird. The Tesla Claw is like the Pyrocider, only better? Well, if it wasn't for the bugs, then yeah. This is probably a close second for me. This weapon shoots electricity. How cool isn't that? And with the gold upgrade, the electric current becomes even thicker and more deadly. What drags it down is that sometimes enemies just doesn't take damage at all from it, which can lead to some annoying deaths when you're hit by an attack from an enemy you thought would get killed or at least knocked back. Penultimately, we have the Morpho Ray, maybe the most well-known weapon? Well, at least the most popular weapon Gadgetron has made, which was actually a failed attempt at making a disintegration ray. Huh, the more you know. To some extent, this is like the Pyrocider, only worse. But hey, it turns your enemies into chickens, so it gets a free pass. Larger enemies takes longer to transform, and the gold upgrade turns them into larger chickens. Finally, we have the Rhino.
What's a rhino anyway?
Rip ya a new one.
What did you just say to me?
R-Y-N-O. Rip ya a new one.
Why, that's the most powerful missile launcher in the galaxy. I know it's worth a lot of bolts. He must have stolen it from the Blarg.
Stolen? Look, trash can. Did I say's anything about it being hot? You better watch your mouth or I'll...
Wait, don't tell me. Rip you a new one.
Probably not something you'll be buying too soon. Coming in at a whopping 150,000 volts, this is the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. This thing just totally breaks the game. You're basically unstoppable the moment you get your hands on this from the black market dealer on Rilgar. This weapon is so powerful that you can defeat the final phase of the last boss in less than 30 seconds. All in all, despite what I've said about some of them, I really do like the weapons here. They're by far not the best collection of firearms in the series. It's just, they all have their own charm to them, I guess. It all depends on your playstyle whether or not you'll have any use for them, really. The game does encourage you to run right into the thick of the action and be all guns blazing, but it's also possible to take a more methodical approach, especially when you're running through the game for the nth time and knows what's coming up. That's why I like the weapons. They all force you to change your playstyle, some more drastically than others, of course. The fun part is finding the ones that you feel comfortable with, and since there's really no reason to use any of the other ones except in specific situations, well, those are the ones you'll get good at. And like I said, the game really does provide ample reason to use all the weapons. Like on Novalis, where you get the Pyrocider, where the enemies are either beasts that will die in one hit, or robots with poor range. Both of them can easily be dispatched with a flamethrower, or you can add the bomb glove into the mix. Double tapping the triangle button lets you quickly switch between your last two equipped weapons. And if that's not enough, there's also a quick select menu accessible by holding down the triangle button, where you can place your favorite weapons for easy access. At the end of the main path, I guess we could call it, we meet that old guy from an earlier cutscene. This is the first time we really see interactions between Ratchet and Clank. Clank is, for all intents and purposes, a newborn, so he sees the world very much in black and white, while Ratchet is more of an opportunist, stopping Clank when he's about to reveal that they mean no harm to see what he can get out of the situation. Honestly, if it wasn't for this pair and their interactions, this game probably wouldn't be anywhere near the top of my list. It also helps that all the characters our duo meets are equally as interesting and quirky. A good example of this would be Captain Quark's personal trainer in Metropolis.
Listen up, you loudballs! That was the most pathetic display I have ever seen on that obstacle course!
What do you mean?
We finished the circuit, ma'am.
Not only is she, unique, she also sells us the swing shot. Man, oh man, how I wanted one of these as a kid. Just the concept of swinging freely through the sky is so appealing to me. It's no wonder this became a mainstay item in the series. The swing shot is one of 6 gadgets in the game. These function more as tools for progression, though there's one point in the game where you'll need a specific weapon to progress. Most of the time your path is blocked by puzzles involving these gadgets. For example, you need the Hydro Displacer to get to Quark's trailer in Rilgar, and to get the Hydro Displacer you need the Trespasser from Iridia. But to get to the Trespasser you need the Swing Shot from Metropolis. So while there are multiple paths and different stuff to find on each planet, they do make sure that you have everything you need until you move on to the next phase of the game. Usually there are a few planets which culminate in one set destination, and this is repeated twice, I think. The end of the first phase starts by finding Captain Quark in his trailer on Rilgar, where you get this ridiculous cutscene.
What makes one man toil in obscurity while another becomes a hero? Is it strength, compassion, determination, or just pure blind luck? Wise men through the ages have struggled with that very question, but Captain Quark knows the secret. That's why he's been able to defeat more despots, rescue more damsels in distress, and save more civilizations than any other hero in the galaxy. Now is your opportunity to see if you've got the stuff heroes are made of. This infobot contains coordinates to Quark's secret base. Can you quickly conquer Quark's killer cannonade of confounded contraptions? Can you Quarkly quick? Oh, just make your way through the defenses to the center of the base. Prove yourself. Learn the secret, and earn your place in galactic history. Consult your doctor before attempting any strenuous exercise. Not responsible for death or dismemberment. Your results may vary.
Meet me at my headquarters.
Hey, Captain Ratchet, what do you think?
We won't fail you, sir. We promise.
I mean, how could you not love this guy? Well, having him try to kill you is a good start. Honestly, I think Quark is a really good character. Every time you hear of him, he sounds like a cool dude. Sure, he might have become a bit obsolete throughout the years and has had to comply to some advertisement deals to stay afloat, but honestly, he just seems like a somewhat quirky, charismatic, and well-meaning guy. Which is why him being in leagues with Drek comes as such a surprise. Or at least it would have been a nice twist if not for the fact that they blatantly showed him working for the chairman in like the 3rd cutscene. Ding, mother! Like, you'd had to literally be asleep not to notice who this silhouette belongs to. The betrayal of Quark aside, this is what I'd consider the first real boss fight. Sure, we had the Turtle Queen or whatever in the space station, but this guy means business. Just look at that health bar. Thankfully, we won't have to shoot it all the way down, since as soon as you take out the first segment, he'll put up a shield and start chasing you. If you lead it over one of the bridges, he will give out, causing it to fall into the lava, draining another segment. I think this fight does a nice job of alternating between shooting and avoiding his attacks. Though I do feel like it maybe goes on for one cycle too long. He also has this annoying move where he'll suck you off where he'll suck you dry, where he'll suck out your ammunition, whatever, just watch the footage. This can be kinda annoying since you have to run around and collect everything again, and as far as I know, the attack itself is unavoidable. In the aftermath, things starts to heat up. Ratchet is pissed, and rightfully so. After all, Clank just literally led him into a death trap, and although he probably wouldn't admit it, he probably did look up to Quark, if only just a little. It's here that you start to get a better grip on Ratchet's personality. At first glance, this might seem like your standard hero story. Some normal dude finds himself in the middle of something bigger than him and rises to the occasion, becoming a true hero by the end. But that's only half the story, actually more like 1/3. Ratchet has this teenage/surfer attitude, and when we meet him, he's stuck on Veldin, a backwater planet on the edge of the galaxy. He just wants to see the world, so to speak, so when he meets Clank, he grabs that opportunity and doesn't let go. Sure, he agrees to help Clank find Quark in an effort to save the galaxy, but this is only his secondary goal. Most everything you do in the first 2/3 of the game is purely based on one thing: selfishness. Ratchet does what he wants to do. He doesn't actually care about the bigger picture, he just wants to experience cool stuff. This is taken to its logical extreme when Quark tries to have him killed, and the whole plot turns from happy-go-lucky romp through the universe to a revenge story, which ultimately ends in a dogfight against Quark where Ratchet is the victor. Clank is his Jiminy Cricket in this scenario. Even when Ratchet tries his damnedest to go after Quark, Clank reminds him that there are still people affected because of Jack's plan and pushes him in the morally right direction. This culminates in Ratchet finally getting to grips with reality when he sees the destruction going on Altanis. This planet is ravaged by storms, bombs, and everything in between. Clank pretty much immediately gets hit by lightning when he exits the ship. By the way, this ship, super cool. And he needs to stay in there for the duration of the level. Not having Clank feels weird. For one, you won't be able to glide anymore. Oh crap, I totally forgot to mention that, didn't I? Yeah, the little robot is more than just a decoration, he actually has a bunch of uses. First off, in Metropolis, he gets the helipack upgrade, which lets you glide, long jump, and high jump. This is upgraded later on when you get the thruster pack upgrade. It's basically the same as the helipack, except it moves a little bit faster and has some new moves. For one, you can butt stomp these big switches. This is utilized like 3 times throughout the game, but more importantly, it also gives you a strafe function. It's a little weird how this is locked behind a Clank upgrade. You'd think that you would be able to move side to side pretty effortlessly without having to use jet engines, but hey, I'm not a game designer. While the strafe is nice to have, it's a bit clunky. To activate it, you have to double tap R2, which doesn't always work, so I end up just not using it at all, really. Finally, there's the Hydro Pack, which lets you zoom around underwater. This is a welcome addition since underwater movement up to this point has been really slow, and the Hydro Pack is used in some really fun underwater sections. Yeah, you're not just gonna run around jumping and shooting in this game. There's actually a lot of different things you can do throughout the adventure. This, of course, includes the puzzles you solve with the Hydro Displacer and the Trespasser, but there are also grind rails to traverse with the Grind Boots, ventilation chutes to walk on with the Magna Boots, hoverboard races to take part in with the board you get from rescuing Skid McMarks. Man, I love these races to death. They're too fun. Sections where you fly a fighter ship and shoot shit up, stealth missions where you infiltrate robot factories or secure ships with the Hologuys, and of course the Clank-only levels. Most of these do a great job of breaking up the action, especially the grinding is super fun. The Magna Boots sections can drag on for a bit, and for some reason, you can't use anything other than your wrench while on these things. The Clank levels are a cool idea, but everything seems to move so slow here. Thankfully, there are only 2 of them, but the second one counts as like 3. All of these use the different gadgets and items you acquire throughout the game to great effect. Though there are some I haven't mentioned, like the helmets, for example. They're kinda minor, but like the boots, you can equip and wear them whenever you want to, which is kinda neat. You don't really see the items take center stage as much, the only exception being the hoverboard. Honestly, I always forget I even have them. They are pretty useful though. The bolt grabber makes it so that you attract bolts from further away, which is a godsend. The persuader gives you a discount on weapons in the Gadgetron vendor, but not ammunition for some reason.
The Persuader is an illegal black market device that tricks Gadgetron vendors into giving big discounts on all items. We at Gadgetron trust you not to take advantage of this unsupported product.
Oh, Gadgetron, how gullible. Also, selling weapons of mass destruction to ordinary people in the pursuit of money is a-okay, but discounts? Preposterous! If you haven't already caught on, the central theme here is capitalism with a tiny little sprinkle of environmentalism. Everything has a price, everything and everyone can be bought, I mean just look at Quark. And if you don't have any money, you're thrown away as trash.
Newsflash, giant robots attacking! The escape transports are taking all the rich folks off this god-darn planet.
So why aren't you on one?
Socioeconomic disparity.
What?
He hasn't got enough bolts.
Working people have to wait for Captain Quark to save us.
Where were we? Oh, right. Our next destination is Quart 2, but we have one more stop in Ultanis before we go on our way. So, if you look carefully at the scene where Quark goes down, you'll see someone getting ejected from the ship. Looks like whoever that was landed on the planet. In the middle of nowhere, there's a stand with a guy that sells the Gadgetron PDA.
Public display of affection?
No, personal delivery assistant.
And he looks mighty familiar.
Yeah? How do I know it works?
You can always trust Gadgetron quality, or my name's not Steve.
Huh. I guess he just has one of those faces.
Thank you, and have a Quark-tastic day.
What'd you say?
Nothing.
The PDA can be really helpful as it lets you buy ammo from wherever you are, at a very steep price, however. It's nice if you're in a pinch, but I'd refrain from using it too often. Say what you will about Quark, but he sure gets his ass back in the game really quickly. What's funny is that you can see that he was doodling Ratchet and Clank on a piece of paper while he was standing there. I never noticed that before. Now, I'd say that I know this game like the back of my hand. What the fuck is that? But the fact that I'm still discovering little parts that I've never seen before is truly the mark of a great game to me. There's a bunch of these small moments everywhere in the game that are very easily missed, like Ratchet holding his breath when he lets Clank out of the ship on Orkson, or how Gadgetron is actually run by a bunch of chickens, or that you can talk to the Quark robot in Metropolis several times for different dialogue. Okay, one last one. Did you know that if you do flips in front of the woman in charge of the hoverboard races in Rilgar, her breaths grow to huge proportions? And that it even carries through in the cutscene where she gives you the Platinum Zoom Raider? Like, I know this is really childish, but I can't help but laugh each time I watch this cutscene. Core 2 is somewhat of a mixed bag to me, honestly. On one hand, you have the awesome giant Clank part where you just crush everything that stands in your way without even breaking a sweat. On the other hand, there's the stealth section where you break into the robot factory. Before you're able to do that though, you'll need the Hologuise, which is available on the next planet, Kalibo III, as a prize for winning the hoverboard race there. I don't really mind having to backtrack, especially not when it's this easy, but I do sometimes wonder why the different things you need late game aren't as spaced out as in the early game. When you instantly get what you need in the next world over, it feels kind of pointless, to be honest. Let me also mention that this cutscene is another example of why forcing the game into widescreen was a bad idea. The original game was displayed in 4:3. While I do respect and to some degree agree with the decision to display more of the game in a widescreen output instead of just stretching the picture, it really shows that it was made with a 4:3 aspect ratio in mind. Models sometimes just stop briefly at the edge of the screen before disappearing, and some characters are just staring emptily out at nothing. There are also a bunch of other minor graphical glitches, though I'm not sure whether these were in the PS2 original as well or not. In the factory, our duo comes face to face with Clank's creator? Mother? In probably the most touching cutscene in the game, which is followed up by Ratchet realizing that the optimal orbit for Drek's new planet is currently inhabited by his planet, Veldin. It all really does come full circle. At this point, Ratchet's motivations are back in full force to being selfish again, and after a quick infiltration of Drek's flagship, we find out that the laser which is on track to annihilate Veldin is set up just outside his home. So I'm kind of unsure of whether Drek is doing this because Veldin really does occupy the best orbit in the galaxy, or because he wants to make things personal just to piss off Ratchet because of how much he's gotten in their way. Like, he literally left the infobot with this video on it for Ratchet to find, and in it, he's standing right in front of his garage. A lot of people think that Drek is one of the weaker villains in the series. I, however, feel like he belongs near the top, honestly. On the surface, he's just a greedy businessman, but when you start to really look into his character a bit, you'll see that he's motivated by money, yeah, but there's also a part of him that likes to be evil just for the sake of it.
Lieutenant! Yes, sir. You have fulfilled your tree quota. Barely.
We are ready to return to base.
Not so fast, Lieutenant. Just because we don't need any more trees doesn't mean they should have them. Destroy everything.
Which is why I'm leaning towards the theory that he's blowing up Veldin more to spite Ratchet than anything else. Every cutscene he's in is a blast too. He's got this villainy feel to him, while not being super over the top all the time like later bad guys tend to be. And it fits the narrative of the game really well. Not too serious, not too silly, but a fine mix, which helps set him apart from the rest of the cast. Makes him feel special. The game is for the most part very humor-centric. It never forgets that that is its strong point. An alien and bizarre setting needs an alien and bizarre cast of characters, and I feel like they hit the nail on the head with this. Ratchet and Clank, of course, goes right after Drek. The beginning of the end is where the beginning of the beginning began. It's, almost poetic, in a way. On our second visit to Veldin, we get to continue on past where we picked up Clank. The game just goes all out right here. If you want to survive, you'll have to use most of your weapons at the right time in the right places. There really aren't that many difficulty spikes in the course of the adventure, but this is one of them and arguably the steepest. Be prepared to die a few more times than you have until now. The final fight consists of 3 phases. The first one has you squaring off against Drek with Giant Clank before he shrinks him back down and runs off while firing rockets at these platforms so that they fall as soon as you step on them when you try to pursue. Each time you land on a solid piece of land, there's a short fight before he blows the entire thing up and you need to chase Drek down again. Finally, you land in a big arena, which is the laser cannon itself, and Drek starts a countdown timer you need to intercept before it reaches 0. It's actually no problem at all to get to it in time, but you're gonna need to do it a couple of times, as each time you take down one segment of his health, he restarts the timer. This fight drains ammunition like a motherfucker, and you'll probably need to use everything in your arsenal to take him down. The worst part is actually surviving long enough to see him killed, and on his last segment of health, he starts shooting out these green things that hit the ground and explode on a delay. If you're not careful of where you're going, you'll die to this attack in a matter of seconds. And even with all this going on, he's still doing his regular attacks. It's a hard final boss for sure, and if you die, you're transported all the way back to where you fought him the first time. I really wish they had a checkpoint when you arrived on the laser. Some of the platforms on the way can be a bit buggy, and I'd rather not traverse these more times than I have to. It's all worth it at the end though, as Drek is catapulted onto his own planet, and you get to personally fire the laser at it, obliterating it into a million pieces that are now going to fall on Veldin. Yeah, maybe the consequences weren't considered as much as they should have been for this one. The pair is hit by one of the meteors and flies towards the edge of the platform. Clank, however, manages to barely catch onto the ledge, but with a damaged hand, they end up falling anyways. This next scene always kind of confused me. They land safely thanks to Clank knocking the shit out of Ratchet, and Ratchet gets up and walks off, leaving Clank alone on the ground with a damaged arm. So, they've been through both thick and thin by this point, and pretty much knitted a very close bond with each other. I honestly don't believe for a second that Clank actually thinks that Ratchet would abandon him here for no reason other than, okay, Galaxy's saved, we're done here, see ya. Of course, our favorite mechanic returns, and he offers to fix Clank's hand. I mean, it's a touching scene and all, but, well, it doesn't hold up under scrutiny, to be honest. Oh, and by the way, remember to kill the toad things at the start, or else this'll happen. You know, I might not have realized this at the time, but in many ways, I feel like this game kind of mirrors the friendship I had with that kid, you know? It was like the perfect story to bond over, an outgoing, hip and cool guy making friends with a nerdy robot. It all felt like it almost mirrored reality. Well, except that he didn't really come back for me at the end. So, that's Ratchet and Clank. Or is it? I barely touched on this screen earlier. Along with listing how many you've got each of gold bolts, gold weapons, and skill points, it also allows you to either warp back in time to before you defeated Drek, or start a new game with all your current bolts and weapons. While it doesn't change much about the game itself, it's a fun way to encourage replayability. You'll certainly need to play through the game a bunch of times to afford all the gold weapons, not to mention the Rhino and the health upgrades, after all. Challenge mode also gives you more bolt drops as well. I think maybe it scales with the number of challenge run you're on, but don't quote me on that. Another fun thing about challenge mode is it unlocks the goodies menu. Here you can rewatch the cinematics or even the cutscenes from the world you're currently in. There's a cheats menu too, but it's empty. This is truly a relic of the good old days, where you had to input different button combinations to activate cheats. This menu is actually just a way to quickly turn them off and on once you unlock them. The funniest ones are definitely the big head modes. It makes you want to play through the game again just to see how all the characters looks. I mean, just look at this! Is this not the most hilarious thing you've ever seen? Oh god, science has gone too far, man. I regret every life choice that led me to this moment. You can also access the skill points here. You might have seen a notification about getting a skill point in the footage so far, and this is where you'll find them. These extra small challenges are tied to certain things you can do in the different worlds that might be a bit out of the ordinary, I guess. They don't really give you much of a hint either. The only piece of information you're getting is the name of the skill point and where you can gain it, which a lot of times makes getting skill points a hassle. But it's kind of fun to just go off and do something completely random and be like, what? That was a skill point? Like strike a pose, for example. To get this one, you need to hover down to that big robot statue on top of Big Al's workshop. It's kinda neat though. It shows how the developers knew that you could get down there, and they reward you for trying out new things and exploring. With that said, the skill points doesn't really do much special. When you get half, 15 of them, you unlock the sketchbook in the goodies menu, which shows off early character sketches and environmental sketches. This is like 100% for guys like me who just wants to know everything about the games I love. And it's always nice to get a little behind the scenes look at the early design phase too. Collecting all the gold weapons unlock the small making of documentary, which is honestly more of a commercial of the game really. And the 3 commercials they actually made for the game. It's just too bad the HD port ruined them. I kinda miss it when devs put in extra stuff like this. Finally, completing all 30 skill points unlocks the epilogue. It's nothing special, honestly, but it's kinda neat to know what became of the different characters in the end. I love how the reporter that got bit by the goo monster ended up falling in love with it. It's just so dumb. All of these covers parody some magazine. Like the one Clank is on is obviously supposed to be Time magazine. You can tell that they clearly had a lot of fun with these. Actually, it's been a while since I looked through them all. I can't believe how silly some of these are. Yet, some of them almost seem
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
They do move in herds.